Welcome to How Did You Do That, the podcast where guests share their behind the scenes of their successful B2B content marketing campaigns. The path to success is rarely as smooth or straightforward as we think, and we want to hear all about it. This podcast is hosted by Isoline Communications, your local friendly tech B2B content marketing agency. So I'm Claire Trevian, and I'm an AD at the agency, and I'm calling you from France today. And my co-host today is Anu Ramani, our fearless leader at Isoline.
So they say. Hi guys, I'm Anu Ramani and I am dialing in from London.
Excellent. Our special guest today is Marty Roberts, who's a success-driven and well-respected executive leader with 25 years of experience and a strong background in management, marketing, and strategy. Marty's history includes creatively mapping, strategizing, and realizing extraordinary growth in streaming media, system software, and startups. So, hi, Marty, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's just kick this off. It'd be wonderful if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah. So most of my career has been around the streaming media space, especially the last 20 years. I think that's probably the most relevant. In these particular cases, my last role, I was the SVP of product strategy and marketing for a company called Brightcove. And so I was responsible for really helping to shape the overall message for the company, our content strategy for the company, and make sure our products were well positioned and well priced to continue to grow and expand the $200 million business that Brightcove has built up to date. Prior to that, I actually had a startup. It's a customer data platform specifically for media and entertainment companies. The company was called Wicket Labs. We built it up to about 13 people. We raised about $7.5 million and actually ended up selling that company to Brightcove a little over 2 years ago now. And so quite a successful journey as part of that startup ecosystem as it goes. And then before that, I actually worked for a division of Comcast. And in that particular role, we had a video platform called The Platform. And we built that up as one of the original online video platforms in the space. And in that particular case, I filled a lot of roles. I ran marketing, then sales and marketing, and ultimately as a co-CEO of this subsidiary of Comcast, where we built up the product. And really, at some point, we had 65% of all the U.S. cable and broadcast networks were actually on our platform. We were helping them get their content online for whatever streaming initiatives that they have. So kind of a myriad of roles, both marketing, sales, as well as kind of in that leadership role as a CEO. So yeah, a bit of a diverse background there.
Yeah, quite a career. Well, I think we've got about 1 million questions for you today. Anu, do you want to kick us off? Yeah, go for it.
Marty, I work with founders and CEOs all the time, right? People who have had a bright idea, a great technology that they have productized or brought to market in some way. And something that's really, really common among founders is that they really love their product. They're convinced that it is the best thing for everybody. And consequently, they make really, I'm going to use the word bad. They make bad marketers because they're so in love with their products. It's very me, me, me. And they literally cannot understand why their prospective audiences don't think the same way. But you weren't like that. You had a really strong understanding of that cycle. And I'm just interested in understanding how you had such a flair for keeping technical and product audiences engaged throughout the purchase cycle.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's a great reminder. As they say, no one has an ugly baby. So, and of course, mine was beautiful, of course. But we always have to remember that at the end of the day, and I have to remind, especially a lot of the technical leaders I've worked with, that the way that we want to sell our product, the way that we want to be sold to, is not necessarily the way our customers want to buy. And so, when we look at that, we really have to understand who are the personas that we're selling into. What are their pain points? What keeps them up at night? What are their needs? It's super important. But then also, what are their wants? We had just recently, we were talking about a director. What was that director's job? To actually get to a VP. We have to keep their promotion, their motivation actually is in mind. And so that actually changes how they buy software. They actually tend to be a little more conservative because They don't want to make a mistake, things like that. So really, really getting inside that customer's head, which is always the best of a marketer, is always to think, is to have that empathy with our audience, to have that, to really be a little bit, to walk a few miles in our customer's shoes is super important first. And from that, then we can really decide what's our right content strategy, what's our right marketing strategy, what's our right sales strategies. But it all comes from really deeply understanding who that customer is. And I think we oftentimes forget that. We think, hey, if we build it, they will come kind of mentality to product. And sometimes that happens, and that's pretty lucky. But for the most part, the rest of us, we really struggle to find that right product market fit. And the best way I know how to do that is to really deeply understand who your audience is, who that customer is going to be.
And how did you achieve that? Did you do market research, or did you just hire people who came in from the customer side? How did you achieve that?
Yeah, a little bit of both, actually. So, being able to hire people from the industry that have been on the other side, that have been customers of your business, is always super valuable. You really kind of get an inside track into what's going on inside their heads. So that's an advantage. Additionally, though, I think it's really just, it's a lot of market research. In our particular case, it's just a lot of customer interviews. We were going out, talking to a lot of prospects, having really open, frank conversations, little less formal, I would say. My best insights came over a coffee or over a lunch or over a drink with people. And you just say, hey, what's your priorities for this year? And what are you working on? And what are you worried about? And, and you just keep that conversation going by asking a whole bunch of really interesting questions that kind of really dive to the heart of what they're looking for as part of their business today. Once you understand where their business is going, you can decide how you can attack your story to meet them at a really interesting point. And so that's kind of how we think about it. And that's how we kind of got inside our customer sets, was just a lot of open conversations. Now, broader markets, you can do a lot of, more detailed research. You can do surveys, et cetera, things like that. In my startup roles, we didn't have those types of budgets, but we definitely did it at Brightcove. And first-party research can also be really, really interesting to kind of start to get inside of a customer's head, start to identify trends, maybe even before they recognize those trends. So there's definitely benefit to doing that as well if you have the budget for it. And it can actually produce some of the best content we produce actually came from some of that first-party research.
Amazing. And talking about understanding that, are there any technologies, or is there any automated way of doing that? I remember we've spoken about platforms that track buyer intent through websites and so on. We've had some chats about that. What do you feel about software like that? Can it replace these conversations? Does it supplement them?
Yeah, it doesn't. It never replaces those conversations. Instead, it augments a different phase of the marketing cycle or the buyer journey, which is once we have, and obviously this is it's a circle, right? So it's symbiotic. Once we have some really good content, we then have to figure out who's actually in market for our products. Where is as we send out our salespeople and our business development reps or sales development reps to go hunt, where is the hunting the easiest and the best and things like that? And so, we have this fundamental challenge now in that all of our marketing is designed to drive people into our websites today. But for probably too long, we have relied on and ultimately thrown up gates, all the forms. Anytime you get to content, you got to get through a form and things like that. Turns out that most audiences, and Forrester and Gartner have done some research on this, 70 to 90% of the customer journey is done before they ever contact a company. They have done all their research up front and things like that. So if they're going to fill out a form, maybe they're just going to give you junk because they don't want to get peppered with a whole bunch of outbounding at that time. They're not quite ready yet. And we kind of have to respect the buyers to, know the process that they want to run as that part. So what a model like 6 Sense uses is it identifies buyer intent scores, which are really quite interesting. Now what we can say is based on a whole bunch of our Google Analytics data and our Salesforce data, these are the signals built into a machine learning model. So it's using all that processing that actually indicates that a company is in market. Now, we don't know who is in market today. Ford Motor Company is on your website and seems to be in market, and their buyer intent scores start to come up and things like that. And so it's at that point then when we could say, actually, we have a bunch of these kind of what we would call qualified accounts, and we can then start to send our salespeople and our business development reps after those particular accounts, targeting the personas that we know are primary buyers inside that. And so, it's kind of a hand in glove kind of situation where really good understanding of the personas we're selling into, really good understanding of those accounts that are actually in market. And then, I guess the third leg of that stool would then be really good content that actually engages those customers or those prospects even before they're ready to actually share their information with us. And so that's kind of how we thought about the whole model of, really figuring out not just who's our named accounts list, which anybody can create an account list, but actually of those named accounts, which ones are actually in a consideration phase for purchasing a new solution.
I love that because you're kind of revisiting like marketing fundamentals in a way, but sort of amped up with this technology, and it sort of works really well together. I'm just sort of wondering, are there other marketing tactics that you sort of see as like these fundamentals that maybe too many marketers skip that you think they should, take a closer look at and focus on?
So in our particular case, what we ended up doing was getting rid of all of our gates. So that would, be a fundamental actually. Of course, every page on our website had a contact us and a button, and we actually even had a little chat bot that would engage prospects. It was actually quite effective at scheduling meetings, again, when the prospect was ready. But at that particular case, then we changed our content strategy. Instead of doing big, long documents, what we ended up doing was we call them interactive solution guides, where it was like chapters, but you always had to click one more to keep going deeper, because one more click was one more buyer intent signal for the machine learning model to say, yes, this is an account that seems to be in market today. The research is anywhere from, around, I think, an average of 11 different pieces of content that the average prospect engages with. And we definitely found that, at Brightcove, we found anywhere from 7 to 20 different pages on our website people were engaging with. And they were all over the place. There was, we had a consultant that came in at some point and they're like, so what's the buyer journey? Like, it's a spaghetti mess, like it is. They're over here and they're on a press release, and then they're over there and they're on one of our blogs, and then they're over here on our product pages.
Well,
they're
they're
just
behaving.
all over the place, right? Exactly right. There is no, and so, it is the best of the web in that everything is cross-linked, but you really have to just recognize that there is no single B2B buyer journey. It's pretty messy. And so what you need to do is just kind of set the table so that when they're ready to engage with you, they've had all the research, they've been able to consume as much information as possible. So that was kind of our perspective on how to break the marketing model. A little bit differently than we have in the past, where it used to be, get you onto the website, get you into a form, then we'll give you a piece of content. That was kind of the standard. I don't think that's as effective anymore, actually.
I think it's a less mature model for sure. Are there any mistakes that you have made, or at a more general level, you see marketers in this area, tech B2B, making that you wish they wouldn't make, or something you have done in the past that you wouldn't do again if you could revisit?
I'm not sure the podcast has time for all my mistakes anymore, but it is. We could. Kiss me up late at night, things like that.
Just your top three. No.
Exactly right. So, in general, I think that one of the fundamental mistakes I think that we make, especially around product marketing, is not matching the stage of where a company is relative to kind of that classical product lifecycle model. The value prop, the types of positioning that we put into market, and then the resulting material that we have behind that. So let me give you some examples of that. So the video platform space is a pretty mature space. It was actually invented about 25 years ago, in terms of 24 years ago, when the first online video platforms came into the space. So for the media and entertainment side of the industry, it's actually a pretty mature space as it goes. Okay, well, let's recognize that our customers then are pretty educated about this technology as it goes. Too often, though, what we're doing is we're thinking about, okay, so what's our pricing strategy? Well, if I'm at market, great. But if I'm a premium price point because I'm better than everyone else, then I need to justify that premium price point. But in a mature market, too often what you find is, hey, you'll find marketers will come out and they'll say, hey, let's talk about all our features. And you're like, no, functional positioning is something you do early stage. But, when I was at Wicket Labs, it was a startup. I was selling charts and graphs, feature by feature by feature, because that's what I had. But in a more mature market, especially with a premium price point, now I need to sell value. Now I need to sell on top of that. I'm not quite at a stage where I can sell brand, like B2B companies about 10 billion, and above in revenue. They start becoming more consumer-like, where they start selling brand, IBM or a Salesforce or something like that. But in this particular case, we're selling value, and so it's a value-based positioning message. Now, I'm not talking about my features. In fact, I would say that we shouldn't present as many features as we possibly can. But, you get caught in these traps. Well, let's do our competitors are putting out a competitive blog post, why they're better than us, feature by feature by feature by feature. We should match that. And I would say absolutely not, because what you're really doing is you're falling into that like functional positioning trap. The problem with feature by feature is a customer will look at the list and go, well, I want to go with you, but I don't need those 4 features. I want a discount. And so, you fall, and so you're like, oh man, like I don't need those extra features. You didn't sell the value. You didn't sell the, hey, you have a pain point. I've solved that with a great value-based solution. All the other features, they're just there. That's icing on the top, that kind of story. And so I think as we think about that, our content strategies we have to really understand what is our messaging framework. Are we a value-based framework? Then our content strategy needs to reflect that value-based message. It can't get into feature lists. It can't, you can do a feature release on a new, blog post or whatever the case is. But really what you're looking is each one of those features needs to add and be a proof point against that value. It is not something that needs to stand on its own. And I think too many marketers, too many companies don't have a perspective on what is the messaging framework they're going to market with. Why are they employing that particular messaging? And then how does that, positioning and messaging as a product marketer is kind of an academic exercise. It doesn't really manifest until your content strategy actually makes it, real. And is it pushing all the way through? Is it manifesting on your website, in your sales materials, et cetera? And so I think that's a mistake that a lot of marketers make. I definitely have made it in the past. It's something I've had to learn, some might say the hard way, to really make sure that we're matching our positioning strategy with our pricing strategy, with ultimately our content strategy to tell a cohesive story.
Talking about telling a cohesive story, right? Marty, you have something of having worked with you and your subordinates, you have something of a reputation for being a real stickler for high quality content. And I don't mean well written content, but it's more the substance of the content that you really were very, very focused on in terms, does it hit the needs of the pain point? So talk to us about what mental checklist do you have when you gauge the quality of content?
Yeah, I have a pretty simple bar for my teams, and that is if a prospect or a customer is going to give us their time to read our materials, are they going to come away smarter? Are they just going to learn something? Is there some nugget? Because it's a privilege to take that time with a prospect, and we have to respect that they are looking to learn something. Too much marketing that I read is really surface level. It's just skimming the tops, and I'm like, no, we got to go deep. We got to help our customers educate. We have to help educate our customers and our prospects. We have to make them smarter in this space. And if we do that, and I don't have any scientific, backup on this, but I've always felt like if we respect our prospects and we make them a little bit smarter, that's the best brand touch that we've seen out there. That's going to put the company into a better light. And when that sales rep does engage with that prospect, they're just going to go in on a much higher plateau than they were before. They're going to at a higher level. They're going to come in and basically have a good conversation with that prospect about those particular topics, about those particular whatever we were digging into. We're not going to be talking a lot about features and functions and things like that. We're going to be talking to the customer about the business problems they have and how, we had a good white paper that spoke to that particular business problem, or we had a great solution guide that really shared some insights. And so as I'm reading through, especially kind of, let's say we're 3/4 of the way through the process, is kind of typically when I would get involved with my team. I'm really kind of putting on that customer hat to say, what's novel? What am I learning about this? Bonus points for me if I learn something new. But really, can I empathize with the customer enough that I can see how they're going to learn something new? I'm the expert; they're not, and so so what are we going to teach them that's going to make them a little bit smarter? And I just find that's been a better content strategy for me throughout my career than it's pretty easy to put together, especially now, like with generative AI and all the tools that are out there, you can put together a surface level summary of all kinds of stuff.
Absolutely.
And so how do you, the bar's only getting, higher for content strategies. So, yeah.
It is the best way to stand out with a bit more substance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you. I think that completes that particular portion of the podcast. I wanted us to move on to a quick fire round of truth or myth, if that's all right, where basically I share with you a statement and you tell us if you think it's true or false. And if you want to expand upon it, then that would be wonderful.
Okay.
That sounds good. Okay, so the first one is trade shows are a waste of time.
So I say false to that. So in my experience, let's back up. It depends on what your point is, right? So just showing up to a trade show and expecting a whole bunch of leads to just pile in as people walk through the booth, sometimes I guess that happens. But I don't really find that that's absolutely true. But I do find that for trade shows, the people that are a little bit deeper into a stage of the sales cycle, they go shopping. It's one time a year where I'll get senior executives to kind of come out of their offices or now out of their homes and actually will sit down and engage with people. And so oftentimes our conversations at trade shows, the classic would be, the Consumer Electronics Show in January. There's no leads that are happening there, but there are a whole bunch of senior executives that are stopping for a few days to kind of learn what's out there, what's going to be new in the technology space, what they need to have on their own radar, and they're willing to sit down with vendors and have a deeper, meaningful conversation. From that, then we get their entire agenda for the year. So, what's your priority going on this year? And from that, then we can come back in and say, oh, you have an initiative kicking off, in the spring. We're not going to keep hammering you next month and the next month, but we are, as we start to get into March, that's when we're going to turn up the volume and that kind of thing. And you really kind of get a sense of what's the timing and the rhythm of the customers themselves. That's one example of using a trade show really well. I just came back from NAB and we had dozens and dozens and dozens of customer meetings all set up, prospect meetings and things like that. Again, people were there and they were shopping for new solutions. And I think that is how you make a trade show really effective, actually. Am I right? Am I wrong? What's that?
No,
Are you going to say fail?
Well, I partly
Yes.
agree. I think that it's difficult to do trade shows, right? And it's very easy to fall into the trap of saying, I'll go to a trade show and I'll meet a bunch of customers there. But it
Yeah,
is
that's
not
right.
a substitute.
No, it's not. In fact, anybody that's just walking in your booth, I mean, it happens. Walk-ups happen, but they're more, it's, yeah.
You do need to have some kind of plan. It's not just going to magically happen.
That's right. Exactly right. Yeah.
For before, for during, for after, especially. And I think they forget about the after a lot of the time.
That's right.
just like bung them into the newsletter and don't do anything else.
Right, exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I love that what you said about trade shows almost as another research tool as well in that. And I think that's a lovely way of thinking about it.
Absolutely. I mean, face to face has kind of fallen off after, post COVID. And it's really tough to find those, even when you can go to a town and say, hey, I'm going to be there. People are like, oh, I'm actually, I'm not even in town. I moved, 100 miles away and things like that. These are our realities that we have to think about. And so getting people together, it counts. It still matters. So
Yeah, no, I mean, I think again, it's also which events and whether they're just an exercise for the sales team to have a bit of a jolly, or whether there's really fully being thought about. But yeah, yeah, it goes through different, I think, trends of being really positive about them and feeling really negative about them, depending, I think, on how they're utilized.
yeah, I mean, I've always had a quota, no one's going unless you have 4 customer meetings. That is at least 4 customer meetings. And so that actually makes it a much more deterministic, kind of outcome is when you set, objectives for the sales team themselves. So.
Yeah, that seems like a good number for. All right, let's move on to another one. Truth or myth? Personalization is more important than content quality.
So I think that's a myth, actually. I have some experience with personalization, and I think that there's 2 things about personalization that are a little bit of a myth. One is the data quality that you can act off of is actually quite limited as it goes. I had personalization data to say, actually, we think this prospect is in a later stage of a sales cycle already. That's kind of interesting data. Maybe we spin up a hypothesis that instead of promoting a contact sales form, because you've already contacted us according to the data, we start promoting analyst research. Why? Well, the hypothesis is in a later stage sales cycle, at some point you have to go to your boss and say, I'm going to buy this company's product. It's the right product fit for our particular need. It's the right company, and here's all the third parties, either in customer case studies or analyst research that says I'm making a good decision, right? So kind of 3 parts to closing a deal internally inside of an organization. So maybe we should start promoting our analyst research in a later stage. Maybe that works well for personalization, but the numbers never really manifested that way. The second thing is that, again, how do you design, personalization comes from this idea, much more appropriate towards a consumer business where you have mass numbers of numbers, and your content requirements are a lot thinner than what we have in B2B, right? So, if the last time you went to go purchase something on an e-commerce site, the description is what? Maybe 200 words, something like that. You can maybe personalize that navigation to get you to the right products, but ultimately the question is in B2B, again, if we're looking at 12 different pieces of content between our blog posts and our videos and everything else, like, how do I know how to direct you to the right thing at the right time? Much more important to invest in good search, good video search if you have videos on your website, good, speech to text transcripts, all those things that help people find the content that they're looking for on the topics that they're looking for. That has become, I've found it to be much more effective than personalization, at least in the B2B side. And then even the B2B side can get, especially here in the States where we don't have any decent privacy laws at all, which is a minor commentary, but it's like, hey, again, I'm using, I don't know, the Ford Motor Company. Hey, you're from Ford. Welcome to my website. That just feels creepy, like, how do you know I'm from Ford? That's just exactly right, and so again, there's lots of different ways to do personalization, but ultimately what I think is I just have not, theoretically it should work well, but it's a question of what's the data you trigger on to personalize the experience? And then how do you test that you're right? How do you test that you're actually generating a better impact because of that? And that's really tough. So, yeah.
think at an automated level, it's so easy to get wrong with B2B, but like on a much smaller scale, a sort of ABM sort of approach, for example, then that obviously that can work. That can be fine when you really know the person, you really know the company and so forth. But yeah, not on a automated scale, I don't think.
Yeah,
But
that's exactly
yeah.
right. Yes. I mean, that's a great point. In account-based marketing, when you're really dialing in and you're looking to amp up your presence with a particular account, that's when personalization can work. But it's not like the classic definition of personalization, which is I don't know who you are, but I know enough data about you to personalize your web experience on my website. You know, I don't, I have 2 million visitors to the Brightcove website, but I don't even think that's enough data to actually make good personalization decisions on. So,
Great. Anu, do you want to pick a final truth or myth?
Let's talk about video. Video doesn't work in tech B2B content marketing. Truth or myth?
that is a myth, actually. So it turns out that all the data is pretty conclusive that video actually works quite effectively at breaking through the noise. When you actually survey both in B2B and B2C, both sides of that equation, most consumers have watched, or most customers have watched a video before they actually make a purchase. And we definitely found that at Brightcove, that now, we obviously had a vested interest and we had video producers on staff and we were constantly producing new videos. But whether it's a customer case study, whether it's a product manager talking through a new product that you're releasing or whatever the case is, or it's an executive presentation talking about the vision of the company. These are all great things that just don't quite convey, they don't read as well as a presented video. Basically, they don't present the excitement that an executive has about their company and everything they're doing, or a product manager about the novel new thing that they're releasing and things like that. That level of personalization, that passion that kind of comes through in a video doesn't translate into text. And it's important for prospects to understand that, that we don't have just a bunch of robots doing our jobs on the other side, that we have people that are passionate about it, that they're thinking about this all the time. That's what I want to hire. That's the partner I want to bring on board. And so I think that video is actually a much more effective medium for those types of things. It doesn't work in all cases. It's no substitute for a good, deep solution guide that's going to educate the customer over time. The webinar format has been well overdone and doesn't work well anymore and things like that. But short videos, 3 to 5 minutes max, on a particular topic or a particular message, actually is quite effective as part of the overall, as one more piece of the overall content strategy. So in and of itself, it's not, you can't do just video, but I would also say you can't do just text anymore. You have to do everything. So
You certainly do.
I think it's also partly accessibility too, and just people liking to digest things in so many different ways. So one person will really get all the information they need and enjoy it from a video, and somebody else will much prefer long form text, and somebody else will prefer a podcast. And it's just nice to have lots of options, for the same
absolutely,
topics in a way. Yeah.
it's
I
so
think
true.
another important point is the fact that video is so much more democratized now. Everybody can make videos. And that heavy, over rich, over seasoned corporate video with a big mic and a big, that is now no longer necessary. So it's actually easier
That's
to
right.
produce and more believable as well.
That's exactly right. And so everybody's now used to, whether it's YouTube or TikTok or whatever, everybody's used to those informal videos. And they'd much rather see the true kind of passion of those employees as they're presenting their next new thing than and how much fun they're having with their product than actually, the corporate talking head and the rest of the stuff. It's going to be a really, as a slight aside, there's this idea where generative AI, especially around video production, is going to bring down our video production costs dramatically. I can literally just type in a script and have this professional looking, avatar of a human that is, I can't tell the difference, newscaster like person, read it out, looks super professional and things like that. The question is does that leave a credibility gap with our prospects? And I don't know the answer to it. Is it better to have a more professional looking summary of all my new product announcements and things like that? Or is it better to have a product manager that's super excited about it? And they've been working on it for the last 4 months and it's just, it is their thing. It's their baby. which one actually has a better impact on that prospect? A little less professional, maybe, because we're not all professional spokespeople, but maybe a little bit more credible. And so these are the questions that we have to answer as marketers, because video production is going to get really easy, but video production with credibility, I don't know, I think the bar is actually going to go up because it's going to be so easy to produce videos.
I've always felt that with the generative AI, authenticity, which is such an important driver in decision making, that will get compromised.
It will. It will, for sure. It's going to be a fascinating couple of years, especially
I think
around
so.
content marketing with video in particular. So,
And I guess we'll become so used to seeing them that we won't even think twice after a while,
that's right.
which will be very strange. But yeah, I know where my preference lies, but I guess it can be useful for certain stages, certain types of moments where you don't need an authentic real person for it maybe as much, but
Possibly, yeah, maybe product demos or product demonstration
yeah,
videos, things like
step by
that. No,
steps, all that
yep,
kind of
something
stuff,
like
and
that. I mean,
that could
there's
work.
definitely a time and place. No reason to go license B-roll if the computer can just generate it, things like that. So definitely the industry is going to change a little bit, but at the same time, I think being authentic as you bring your message to market, I think is going to still have a premium.
Great. On that note, thank you so much, Marty and Anu, for this chat. Really interesting stuff.
Marty, thank you for your time and your generosity with your insights as always.
It was super fun. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Thank you.